tips and tricks and how to pick your modern deck for this RCQ season, as well as some live hot takes from Sam.
Looking forward to this one, guys.
This week on battlechads.
Yeah. Hello everybody and welcome to this week's episode of battlechads. I'm Josh and I'm joined by my two co-hosts Sam and Dan. How you doing, guys?
Hello.
So this week we're going to be talking about tips and tricks into the processes that we use into picking decks up to the RCQ season, as well as any sort of competitive events, because deck choice is ultimately the first choice you make in a game of Magic before you even sit down to play a game. And then we're going to talk a bit about Modern, and then Sam has got some hot takes for us that we've not actually hit, like me and Danny don't know about yet. So we're going to have some live reactions to some hot takes that Sam has mysteriously come up with. But before we get into that, guys, how you doing? What have you been up to?
Very well. We're in the full swing of a Modern RCQ season at the moment. I'm not too sure if you guys have gotten down to play some Modern yet, but I have, and it's looking like a pretty good format at the moment.
Yeah.
Also doing well. I've yet to go to short to an RCQ. I'm sort of taking this as like a little holiday this season, because Modern's not my biggest my most favorite format, let's put it that way. But I've been enjoying it. I've been playing some leagues online. It's been fun, been good.
Yeah, because we'll talk about the sort of decks that we've been playing recently, but you've took a completely new arc in the Modern format, which is really exciting. Actually, when I saw it, I was like, "What? Where's the red cards?" So we'll talk a bit about Modern now. You've lads saying you're enjoying Modern. I'm very enjoying Modern. I picked up a deck that I sort of had like I fancied it for quite a while, and because I was so fixated on like frog, traditional frog, I mean like Murktide sort of decks, it sort of put me off from arcing towards it. But we'll talk about that for a bit. So, guys, currently, what have you been playing in Modern? What have you been testing?
Well, no surprise for anyone who's an avid Sam enjoyer. I've been checking out the combo decks in Modern, and there's been sort of I think some of these like unfrozen, some old combo focused archetypes, and Allosaurus Rider has started stamping around Modern again. So I've been looking into that and checking that out.
Cool.
I've taken sort of a page out of Sam's book. So I was originally on Blue Red Prowess because Corey Steelcutter plus Bauble. Why would you not play them? And then I was looking and I was speaking to two of the Chad Magic teammates, George and Jack, and they said Living End looks really, really well positioned at the minute. So I looked it up, bought some of the cards, and now I've got like 70 out of 75 of the deck here, and I've been running it through leagues. I got my very first trophy ever on Magic Online.
Well done.
Let's go.
Congratulations.
But it's fun. It's a good deck. It's like Josh said before, it's a completely different curveball to what I'm used to playing. If it's not got basic mountain in, then I usually don't want to know. But this is just Bant Living End. It's been treating me well.
It's a very proactive deck, though. I mean, like I know you don't really do anything in terms of interaction and stuff in the early turns, other than your free spells, force negations, subtleties, endurances, all that sort of stuff. But you are proactively building towards a game strategy. You know, you're cycling, you're building a graveyard up, and then you're ultimately trying to combo off with your cascade. So even though like you've arced away from your red decks, you're still taking a proactive strategy, which is, it's sort of, I can actually see how you would really enjoy that.
Yeah, I've been loving it. And worst case scenario, if your opponent's playing 4 copies of Leyline and Void and you can't Live and End and combo them out of the game, you can just play Endurance and Subtlety, and even Brazen Borrow was like flash threats to get the life down dead quick. I've won a few games doing that. But obviously you just go cycle turn 1, 2, and then cast Live and End on turn 3, and then just watch your opponent cry.
I mean, I've played Live and End in the past, and the amount of times you just beat someone with a flying 4/4 because they just hold in like surgicals and stuff, and you're just like, no, I'm just going to play a different strategy, and I'm going to play a mid-range deck. A lot of times instant speed as well, especially with the subtleties and the endurances. It's pretty cool. So Sam, how have you been finding Allosaurus combo? Because I've been playing against it. In fact, I'll tell you what I'm playing first before I ask. I've been playing Goryo's Vengeance. I think the deck is very well placed along the same sort of theory as Living End. You know, I think there's a real lack of graveyard hate. I have noticed it up in a little bit, particularly like Grafdigger's Cages and stuff like that to fight the Allosaurus combo. But it's so well placed. Like, honestly, like I think I played 2 leagues yesterday. I went 7-3, and like it just felt great. So we're all sort of on like the sort of combo-ish side of life with a secondary game plan. But back to my previous question, Sam, how have you been finding Allosaurus Shepherd? What sort of like, because I've noticed that the way the deck's been built, it's there's sort of different ways to build it. You know, you've got your birthing pod is that what it's called? The birthing ritual pod thing. Birthing ritual, yeah. That sort of strategy where you sort of like ramp into something, you know, using Allosaurus Shepherd as well as the Neoform sort of things, and then I've seen I actually lost to a game to Neobrand playing the Sorin Planeswalker because it gained loads of life, and then play the Sorin Planeswalker and kill you on that turn. So what sort of strategy have you been going with that deck?
First of all, everyone, welcome to the combo side.
Yeah,
it's nice. Actually, it's actually quite nice we can have a discussion that they'll kind of all involve the same thread. So first of all, guys, welcome. It's very nice to have you over in my corner. It's been lonely. And secondly, Neobrand has been fantastic. So you've kind of just described there, Josh, the older version, which I know that some people are still on and still love, which is sort of the cheated Gristlebrand into play with a Neoform from an Allosaurus Rider. And then from there, you draw 7 cards, pitch really large cards from Nourishing Shoal to gain a boatload of life.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And then it gives you more cards to draw from Gristlebrand. And then there's like, I know there's a Sorin win con. I know that some people play it fast as Oracle win con, whichever. So that is Neobrand traditionally. But Dom Harvey, sort of, who is an Amulet Titan mastermind, well known for playing that deck, he just randomly tweeted one day, I top 8 the challenge with this, and I call it Fair Neobrand. And
Fair Neobrand.
Fair in really big quotation marks. So rather than trying to cycle for your deck, which is quite a fragile strategy, because realistically, when you're playing cards like I forget the name of the Armada Worm, something like that, and Nourishing Shoal, most of your draws
the big
are
Worldspine Worm.
Yeah, Worldspine Worm's one of them. Yeah. So when you play a card like Worldspine Worm, or I can't remember the other worm, but we'll call it the other worm for now. You have to mulligan really aggressively, and also 90% of your deck is a bad draw. So what this Fair Neobrand deck tries to do is take it a notch slower, less glass cannony, and it has some new cards which I really like Galter Primal Hunger.
Yeah.
So when Galter enters, it puts all of the creatures from your hand into play, and there's silly things you do with that when Summoner's Pact. But while this deck can win on turn 2 and turn 1, it's not trying to. What it's trying to do is get as many large, unanswerable creatures into play, because as modern players know, modern is all about answers.
Yeah.
So let's get these creatures into play that you can't answer. Oh, and they're all 13/13s, and have drawn 14 cards. They're even playing Ireni, Song Unending, which is one of the new Spirit Dragons from Dragonstorm, which is just basically reads as a 10/10, you can't kill me, flying. It's pretty cool. So the deck's like taken a bit of a different turn, but it still feels horrifically unfair if it goes well. So yeah, I've been having a great time with it. What excites me the most about this deck is that Josh, Dan, Sam, if we were to play different games against Neobrand right now, there would be 3 different builds across from each of us.
Yeah.
There's a lot of smart people working on this deck. Dom Harvey, Canister, Aspiring Spike are all in that hat. And I can't wait until somebody actually figures out the best 75, and I'll think we have a real modern contender on our hands.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more.
It looks
very, very strong.
It's been making waves in the format, but it's still the current iterations that I've seen. I've not really lost against because they're so glass cannony. Like they're a Spell Snare or a Force Negation. You know, if you don't have the Veil backup, or you don't have the or you get Thoughtseize, for example, it seems really glass cannony. Especially the pod version. You know, you destroy the pod. You know, you have interaction for that, and it's like it's not really doing anything, and then
Yeah.
the deck can sort of lose to itself. But that's the price to pay for such a high power sort of, usually the higher the power of the deck, the more fragile it is, essentially.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, you still never want to draw Gristlebrand, and sometimes you can draw Gristlebrand, so there you go.
I mean, even if you do draw a Gristlebrand, you can just go get a Galter and put it into play anyway.
Yeah.
There's I was watching a video on it the other day, and they were running Xenagos, the god from either Born of the Gods or Journey to Nyx, whichever one it was. And with the Galter and the Xenagos out, it becomes like a 22, 26. Yeah. It looks insane.
It's a good point though, Josh. I have played Magic against a lot of people, and I don't think I've met anyone who always happens to have force blue cards in their hand as much as you. So it must be a good matchup for you in the grand scheme of things. But it's a tricky one, and I think that what I like the most is that it has much smarter people than me interested, and much better deck builders than me trying to come up with a 75. And I think that you can never play that deck and it not be a glass cannon, but I'm excited to see what the final product is. It almost feels like we've had the alpha, this is beta testing, and I can't wait to see the finished product, to be honest.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it's a deck that I looked at and be like, maybe I should give this a try, but I think I just wanted a bit more agency in my deck, and that's why I picked Gurios, because you have a lot of like the pseudo cantrips. You have an alternate game strategy. So for Neobrand, if your main strategy doesn't work, I suppose you could have like Allosaurus Shepherd Beats, but Allosaurus Shepherd Beats, like, it's essentially a big vanilla or semi-vanilla creature in terms of it can get blocked by a monk token or something like that, and it can be essentially just all or nothing kind of thing. And I've always been attracted to decks which have like a really strong game one strategy or game A strategy, but has a relatively powerful plan B as well, which you can hold the trigger on the plan A while the opponent tries to answer your plan B and then trigger your plan A. And that's why I picked Dimir Reanimator in Legacy. It's got that really strong plan B of tempo, but it has that really strong plan A of Entomb, Reanimate, Traxer, etc. Which sort of like puts us in a good stead to sort of like how we've approached the meta and how we've identified the meta, because we're sort of like metagaming. The graveyard and graveyard decks are pretty strong right now, and the sort of combo decks are pretty strong right now, because the main contenders in modern traditional at the moment are Boros Energy, Is It Prowess, and your Eldrazi decks, and all these three decks crumble pretty hard to combo strategies. And now, because the premier tempo deck, Dimir Murktide, is looking really weak in the format at the moment, these combo decks have sort of got like sort of free reign in that sort of space. So that's sort of how we're looking for modern. You lads got any other comments on modern? I know I'm really enjoying modern at the moment. I think it's fantastic. It's so exciting.
Yeah, no, same. I've got no other comments. I'm enjoying it. I like I said at the start, I'm not a big fan of modern, but I've been enjoying it thoroughly while I've been playtesting Living End and a bit of Prowess.
Cool.
It's doing well. I've just got a question for Dan before we move on. Sorry, Josh.
Yeah.
Dan,
hello.
Are you playing Living End in your deck, or are you just playing 4 copies of Corey Seal cut to the Cascade?
Maybe I should do that. But
I mean, the Cascader would trigger it. The Cascader would not obviously the turn you play it, but it would trigger it later Cascades, because you got the spell and then the Cascade trigger.
Yeah,
don't do that, by the way.
Maybe you should.
Don't do that.
And then I could play like Violent Outburst and just do it. It's just... Oh wait, no, never mind.
Yeah, no, please cast that. Actually, easiest round of my life.
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of Cascade, I have noticed that Dimir Rhinos has been picking up a bit of numbers in leagues. Actually, I've noticed.
Yeah.
But I've been playing the gold leagues recently, only because I don't know, better prizes, etc. And I've noticed in those leagues it seems very like uber competitive and uber combo central. I think that's because people are just grinding the prize support out, I think. But you go 3-2-4-1, you're much better. You're not, if you 3-2 in the golden leagues, you're making profit. So it's like you're not just cutting even almost. So it's like there seems to be a lot of combo decks in that sort of format. But yeah, it's modern's super exciting. And it's
When
easy.
when I first go on, sorry.
I was gonna say it's easy to sort of like sideboard with and know what to beat, etc. Because it's quite a focused format as well.
When I first seen that Demir Rhinos deck, I was like, "What on earth is this?" It looked as if it was like
Demir
three
or
different
Domain?
piles. Demir,
Domain.
Domain, yeah,
The
Domain.
Mere Rhinos exist too, to be fair.
Yeah, that's what I'm
fair
saying.
to
So
them.
it was just like the frog deck with not Oculus, but like Murktide Regents and your interactions and your removal spells and that.
Oh right.
Plus 4 copies of
seen
Crashing
this?
Footfalls, whatever it's called. I was
Yeah.
like, what on earth is this?
Like shardless Murktide.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. It reminded me of like Jund back in the old days where you would just cast you would cast your 4-drop Cascader and just go and get something of value.
Yeah. I've not seen that. I'll have to look at that. So choosing a deck for choosing a deck. Now I've come up with 3 points on choosing a deck, or 3 basic rules. Particularly with one of the rules is already answered for us. So that is consider the format. Now the format we're talking about specifically is modern, so that's already picked for us. And that has strong implications. One, because the power of the format. Also the sort of metagame of that format in terms of, how is it? Is it an aggro format? Is it a control format? Is it a combo format? I know Pioneer, for example, was very combo back when Pioneer was a thing. I know that Standard at the moment, there's a lot of aggro competing with the aggro / control space, and I know Modern is more aggro / combo. So you consider your format first and foremost. But we'll focus around Modern. And then the second sort of point or rule, I guess, whatever you want to call it, is are you going to try and metagame, or are you going to try and improve the deck that you know best? Now, we'll talk more in depth about these things as the pod continues, but it's very important to consider that, because you might have a really strong deck, tier 1 deck that you know is really good, really well positioned, but it's just not your style, or it's not your play style, and a tier 2 deck in and out. We had Krista on the pod playing Rakdos Hollow One. I'd argue a mid T2 / borderline T1 deck at the time, and she knew it inside and out, qualified the PT, knew exactly how to build it into the meta. So it's taking your deck that you know best and adapting it to the meta rather than metagaming itself, like we're trying to do with graveyard strategies, and then decide how proactive you're going to be with that deck. Are you going to be the one asking the questions, or the one answering the questions? Now, in a format like Modern, with such a variety of decks and such a variety in the card pool, such a big card pool, it tends to be a lot harder to be the reactive player, because building. That's why Frog's not doing so well. Like traditional Murktide is not doing so well, because building your deck into an unknown meta, particularly when it's full of answers, can be quite hard, because answers need to line up, etc. Any of you boys got anything you want to add to those 3 points?
I think that something people don't really take into account when considering deck building or deck choice, importantly, is that Modern especially, you've already hit the nail on the head, that the answers typically outweigh the threats. And what I mean by that is, Mono Red Belcher was huge a month ago. I've not seen it in a while, and it's not performing. And that's because people have adapted their answers to deal with that question. And I think that's something really to keep in mind, is that Modern especially is always a pendulum, and it's always swinging. And you have to decide what side or what area of that swing you want to connect with. What I mean essentially is, look, Boros Energy and Prowess are 2 decks that are really strong at the moment. However, both of which have a weak combo game. So are you going to be the combo player? Or are you going to be the Prowess player that decides to play main deck Spell Pierce or Force Negation? Or the Boros player that chooses to play main deck Fraven Charm? How are you actually going to tackle or duck and weave through this pendulum? Or are you going to be the outsider who goes, right, well, if combo's good and Boros Energy's good and they're going to collide, what can I pick to sort of answer the 2 of them? And it's always it should never, my advice to anybody listening, and to you two as well, to be fair, because you're forced to listen to me, But my advice to anyone is never have the deck in mind first. So I made a big mistake with this last RCQ season for Modern. I'm playing Storm, and I'm going to play Storm, and we'll see how it goes. 1-2, 1-2, 1-2 in RCQs and stuff. Immediately out of top 8 contention sucks. And it just comes to a point where, well, Storm, it can't be that. You can't brute force your way through this format. It's too sleek. And I would never recommend for somebody to go, right, this weekend I'm going to play X because I own X and it's sleeved up and I can't be bothered re-sleeving. It's all about, takes a bit more nuance than that. Check out the meta game, check out modern challenges, check out what everyone's playing at FNM, and then realistically have a good think about it. And even if you are for certain on your deck, think out the sideboard. It's super important.
Couldn't agree more. Like Simon mentioned about the pendulum swinging back and forth and where you want to be on that pendulum. I've sort of taken both sides of that pendulum. So originally, as I mentioned, I was on prowess. So you wanted to be, the person that's trying to just avoid all the questions and just try and kill someone as soon as you possibly can. And then the meta sort of adapted to prowess. So then Eldrazi popped up a lot more specifically with like Karn and stuff like that, where they could just play Karn, go get Trinisphere, and then prowess would have a really, really hard time dealing with that. So then you can sort of adapt your game. So, for example, I've splashed white for 2 copies of Werther and sideboard, just playing 1 Sacred Foundry, and you've realised that's still not enough because for the odd 1 in 100 games where you play against Murktide and they just play Murktide and you can't get around it, so I've brought in say like a Brazen Borrower into the main board to deal with the Murktides and to deal with other problematic permanents like Trinisphere, like Chalice of the Void, so on and so forth. But then you sort of reevaluate your position on the deck, whether you like it. You sort of reevaluate the position on the deck in the overall meta, whether you like that. If you do, great. If not, then just sort of switch onto the other side of this swinging pendulum. Pick up one of these combo decks that seems to be doing really, really well at the minute with the lack of like hate cards. Living End, for example, Gario's Vengeance, Mono Blue Belcher, all doing really, really well in the format at the minute. And just sort of pick it up, play it, and get some wins.
I think it's a lot down to testing as well because, we had Myra on a couple of weeks ago and he was very... he was an advocate on sort of theory crafting rather than reps, but I like reps, particularly if I know I'm going to a tournament and I know I'm going to see Boros Energy, I know I'm going to see Prowess, I know I'm going to see Eldrazi. I want to face those decks. So it's finding someone who has those decks, play against those decks. Right, I've got a really good matchup into every other format, but Boros Energy I cannot beat, and I know for a fact I'm going to face Boros Energy at least 3 times in an 8-round tournament, for example. And I would add to the sort of rules that I said before is know your event that you go into, because if things like open deck lists, then your main board Blood Moons are going to be less effective. For example, your main board Thraben Charms are going to be less effective because people know about them. And it's considering your deck building more so around that, but also in Modern particularly, you have people's pet decks, your Heliod combos, all that sort of stuff. Are you proactive enough or powerful enough to beat those sort of pet decks, your Sam combos of the world, etc. Who they, the people who've been playing them since MH2 kind of decks. You've seen a rise in Hammer Time as well. Adopting certain things, you have correct a game plan against those sort of random little decks that people seem to enjoy. Your Spike sort of brews. So yeah, consider your event as well, I would say. But shall we delve into these little points a little bit further and expand on them a bit? So metagaming over a deck that you know well. If you can align those two, and so for example, I've picked Goryo's Vengeance because I think it's really good in the metagame, but I also really click with the deck. Like I love the deck, like I understand it, I understand the sideboard, and then you're in a really good position there. But sometimes it's a bit of a split, a fork in the road. Do I play the deck I really love, i.e. Dimir, Murktide or whatever, but Storm, or do I change my deck, learn a deck that is actually good and can actually win, has actually proven off the shelf to just win, and I put my own spin on it, can often be a really hard decision to people to make, particularly when you've got to put a time investment in there. So what are your lads like? What are your lads' thoughts on that? Are you gravitating towards sort of play the best deck, or are you gravitating towards I want to play my deck?
Go on, Sam. I feel like me and you are going to be the exact opposite.
Well, I was waiting for you then, Dan. I didn't want to disappoint Josh with my answer. Okay, so I am a player, and I don't think I've ever played the best deck in the room at any given point. And my best deck in the room, I mean Boros Energy is 30%.
Yeah.
The field, I will play Boros Energy or Frog or whatever else, or Nardu. It's just I've always looked at Magic the Gathering like a game of axes. I don't think it's black and white. I do not think that there is the best deck. If you're not playing that deck, you are not doing it right, or that's, for example, someone like that. Like, if it exists on a 3D axis, then the amount of ways you can approach a room is essentially infinite, right? Like, to some extent. And what I like to do is I think it's underlooked or overshadowed, I guess. But I want to play a deck for one that I'm gonna have fun playing.
Mm-hmm.
Just always, like, you know how excited I get, or how happy seeing Lotus Bloom in my opening hand makes me. I get all giddy. It's great, but like if that was an Ocelot Pride and a Gyarasaurus, it'd be a bit like, oh, okay, fine.
Boring.
Like, I get that this is strong, but yeah, it's just not something. My gears need to be churning as the event goes on, otherwise I'll go into autopilot. And if I go into autopilot, I'm not going to play to my best. There's only so wrong you can go with a Johnny and Goblin Bombardment and whatever else, but it's just not for me. So I'm going to pick a deck that I will have fun playing.
Mm-hmm.
I will also always pick a deck that I think has a good matchup against the best deck in the room. As Josh said, you might be seeing it 3 or 4 times. I looked at somebody's RC breakdown from the very recent American RC standard. They played against Prowess 6 times. And it's just like, if that's the room you're in, you've got to be somewhat confident in the matchup. But I also want to pick a deck that's good against the other deck that everyone's going to pick to be the best deck in the room. Like, it's a bit of a dance. So if Boros is the best deck, and everyone's going to play Eldrazi because Eldrazi beats Boros, I want to pick a deck that's good against the two of them. And that could be any number of things. So I agree with Josh. Affinity's important. Having fun's important. But you also got to pick something serious. Dan, was that everything you hoped for, or do you have something to add there?
No, so I thought we were going to be on the exact opposite ends of the spectrum. I thought you would be like, oh yeah, best deck, Belcher, let's go.
Oh man,
but so I'm sort of in the same boat as yourself. So if I was to pick a pet deck, it would be like Infect or Black Red Goblins combo in Modern or something like that. But I'm very much in the same boat as you. You look at the meta, you see Boros, you see Eldrazi, you see Prowess, all at the top of the chain. And that's where I've now made the choice to switch over to Living End to try and combat not just one of those decks, but all 3 of the top dogs in the meta. Especially because, as we said before, Graveyard Hate is just lacking. And I've done it in previous tournaments, like at the Team Trios event that we did a couple of weeks back now.
Oh no!
So instead of me playing the best deck that I had available to me, which was the best deck in Standard, which was Blue Red Prowess, I shifted from that and I was like, actually, I'm going to play Mono Red. And then I thought, you know what? What's even better than killing someone on turn 3, killing someone on turn 2, and I just shifted to Red Black Leyline. So that was me having fun, but then still also taking the deck decision quite seriously.
Yeah.
Because you sort of analyze it, your aggro matchups still going to be bad into stuff like Temporary Lockdown, for example. So it's not as bad. But no, I'm with yourselves. I'm very much an advocate of if you can play the best deck, then you probably should, because it's probably the best deck for a reason. But there's nothing wrong with picking a deck that's well positioned in the meta. It's a good deck, and it's also got good matchups against the other kingpins that you're going to see in the meta.
I might be the opposite in terms of contextually. because what you got what you got to realize is that depending on the event, F&M, sure, whatever, play whatever you want, play it well, whatever you want. But if you're at an event like an RC and you want to win, I think you have to forgo fun sometimes, because you're not there to have fun, you're there to win. So it depends on how serious the event is, right? And that's back to my first point, consider your event. If you're there, like I'm going to go to an RC queue and I'm going to take it semi-seriously, but I want to have fun, fair. But if you're in an RC or above, you're Mega Modern or something like that, and you want to win that event, I think you have to prioritize winning. I just think you do. Like, you have to. And I think that, you know, like the whole being's like, I don't want to switch from a deck. I've got a lot of, I mean, Modern is a high cost format, right? It's a high cost format, and that means there's going to be some sort of a level of an emotional attachment to your deck because you put time, effort, money into that deck. It's going to be hard to switch. That's why I'm a big advocate on having a collection, you know, particularly in the lands. We've talked about this numerous times in the past, but I honestly, like, you have to consider what you're aiming for, what your tournament is. Marco, we've got Marco in the team. He's queued for the Pro Tour, so for him, like, take fun out of the experience of being there, but the deck needs to win, and that's the sort of approach that I think in that regards. Like, you have to, like, that's what you're there for. Like, if I know for a fact, like, I one day pick up Boros Energy and I'm like, oh my god, I'm like I've got like an 80% win percentage of this, but I hate the deck, but I understand it and I'm winning with it, then it's one of those things, like, maybe you just got to bite the bullet there, but you won't know until you test, right? Until you try it, and that's why MTGO tools like that. So I think I'm actually like, I mean, don't get me wrong, like, I will be playing Psychic Frog in this meta until I die, because that is my soul is Psychic Frog. But if I could play like a deck with Psychic Frog that is gonna win, like, I'm gonna explore that, because that's the whole point, right? Did you agree with me? Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, for sure. And I get the point. And I think that we've almost agreed on someone as a trio, which is very exciting from behind the scenes sort of stuff. I like that concept. But, like, all I can think of is we all played, sorry Dan, you didn't, but me and Josh played a Mega Modern somewhat recently. And all I could think of going into that event was, statistically, there's one winner. Statistically, it's not going to be me.
No.
So let's have some fun.
Yeah. I mean,
on the way up. That's
fine, right? Like, to think like that's fine. It's more prevalent in things like RCs when you can top 32. Yeah. And you've got, you know, you have a real chance to top 32 for the Pro Tour, you know, less of a chance to top 2 in for Worlds, and even less of a chance, you know, the stacks are really, especially in a high variance game, the stacks are massively against you. You need, not only do you need skill, you need deck building, you need luck, you need the stars to align, you need Jupiter to align with Venus, you know, you need all these things to happen. You know, you could be the best player in the world, but if you just mulligan to 5 and then draw land, like, you're not winning that. And that's a real, in a 15-round tournament over 2 days, you're going to get games you're just going to lose. Like, sometimes you'll have no agency over a game. Do you know what I mean? True. Like, that's just going to happen. But the whole point of that is to reduce that, is to improve that agency and reduce the RNG as much as possible, and which comes down to deck building, which comes down to deck choice, which comes down to format knowledge, which comes down to type plays, etc. But even then, it's against you. So I guess in terms of Mega Modern, because the EV is so polarized, like, the chances of me walking away with prizes is pretty low, especially, you know, 200 people and only really 8 people are going to get anything decent. It stacks against you, but yeah, consider your event, I suppose, first and foremost.
Yeah. That's a fair point, definitely. I didn't think about if it's staggered past first or top 8.
Yeah.
And that's actually a really good point to hit
on. So the another point I was thinking we were talking about was being proactive or reactive. Now, I believe in Modern, the correct answer, and the only correct answer to this, is to be proactive. Have a really solid game plan, a really strong question that you're asking of your opponent to answer, and back that up with a strong B plan. I think that is correct. I think having a strong sort of a really strong I win button in your deck is really important. For example, with Murktide is moving back to Oculus a little bit, I've noticed, because you can have the Thought Scour turn 1, Oculus turn 2, brokenness with the secondary game plan of a tempo deck. I think that is correct on how to play Modern, but then it also depends on how amount of like hate you are for that, and how you're going to pivot your A plan and how strong you're going to pivot into your B plan. A deck that I've noticed being played quite a lot is the black white blink deck. That's been doing pretty well at the moment, and they've been splashing blue for Frog as a secondary game plan. As a card draw engine, as an dump your hand into Frog, get your stuff back with Overlord of the Bailmerk sort of stuff, and protect your threats with Ephemerate, etc. I've noticed that come in quite a bit. That seems like quite a strong strategy. It still has the I win button of turn 2 Bailmerk, turn 3 Flicker Wisp, got card advantage recursion and a big strong threat that's hard to answer, sort of thing. And that sort of seems to be the theme of Modern. And I think if you're not on that sort of strategy, you're probably not doing Modern right. Would you agree?
Sounds like Psychic Frog propaganda to me, to be honest.
All hail the Hypnotoad.
Yeah, I can't believe you've just told me we took this deck and we put Psychic Frog in it.
Yeah. I always said that Ketchamos is a Psychic Frog card. I always said that. Ketchamos is paired best with Psychic Frog.
Next thing we know, Josh is going to be talking about like Grixis prowess with Psychic Frogs in it as well next.
I mean, so my point is similar for Living End, right? So Living End has this really strong A game strategy of I'm going to present an overwhelming board state that you have to then try and fight around, or I'm just going to hit you with 4/4s in the air, or I'm going to flash in a 3/4. That is the strong B strategy for Living End. That's why I think that Living End really well. I think Belcher struggles with the B strategy. Sam will probably comment on that, and Storm as well. Storm can, the A strategy is still the Storm stuff, but their B strategy is I'm going to stop you from interacting with me and play a more sort of watered down Storm deck to interact with your interaction.
Yeah, for sure. I think that while I agree with your point, I think it's a good point. My counter argument, and this might just be because I have an affinity for these type of decks, so this might not be too much of a serious rebuttal, but you are playing realistically 3 games of Magic, right?
Yeah.
Let's say most times in Modern, playing 3 games of Magic.
Yeah, most games are played sideboarded.
Yeah, so you play and draw are really strong in Modern. For example, being on the draw against Boros Energy game 1 is a losing situation to be in for most decks. I think we could agree on that.
Yeah.
An average Boros Energy draw against an average random deck, right? So while Belcher or Storm can really struggle with a plan B, what they actually do really well is twofold. It's win game 1 and break serve. And they're 2 things I don't mind sacrificing my plan B for just a little bit. So what I mean by that is essentially, if I'm on a draw with Storm, I can just win on get turn 2. If I'm on a draw with Belcher, I can counter you turn 2, I can counter you turn 3, and I can kill you on turn 4.
Yeah.
I break the serve, I'm likely going to lose the game 2 because I'm on combo deck and you have sideboard cards. But now, game 3, I'm on the play, I've seen what sideboard cards you have, and I also have a sideboard.
Yeah.
I love that scrappy game 3. I really like that experience, and that's why so while plan A and plan B is super important and definitely worth consideration, I really like this canon plan A, and then let's have some scrappy games where we're just rolling around in the dirt in games 2 and 3.
I think having that game 1 win though with a deck is massive, because you could just take game 2. You could just take game 2, and then you've got 30 minutes then to the next round, and you can get lunch, have a break, whatever. A 15-round tournament, you can have a strategy which is really, really powerful, with a strong B plat strategy. And I guess the game 2 comes down to how well you know the format in terms of I'm expecting this hate against my deck. I'm expecting these sideboard cards. I can play around this. I can the game, especially against Boros Energy. You know, the I win button is turn 1, Guide of Souls, turn 2 to Ocelot Prize, for example. Like, not many decks are beating that. But then if you can just slam an Atraxa or just kill them when they've got them on board at, you know, game 1, doesn't matter how well they curve out. But, you know, usually game 2s and game 3s come a lot more scrappy. So if you have a deck with inevitability, like what I am going to win if you don't kill me eventually, you know, that if you're just holding up interaction or you interact the whole game, but the longer it goes on, you're going to win. Those sort of strategies can those sort of like combo strategies can help you in those games as well. That's why I think the decks to avoid right now are things like your Omnath piles, because there's no real I win button. Your value piles, such as that, I think blue white control is a deck you should avoid. You know, because it's just, you have to have the right answers and it's really hard to play around. But even then, the blue white control decks are playing the I win button of here's a Narset, here's a Day's Undoing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, they're still playing that I win button there. I think there's a new deck that's come up, the Land Destruction deck. You know, bit of flavour of the month. People are like, what is this deck? Easily to play around once you realise what it is. I'm just going to hold my fetch lands until I'm ready to kill you, and then you're not going to have much against me, kind of thing, because your interaction is weak against what I'm trying to do. You know,
fetch lands? What a lands?
what a lands, yeah. So, you know, there's sort of like, if you can present an overwhelming threat or make the player play in a way where they have to skew their curve to play around your overwhelming threat, I think that's where you want to be in Modern. And I think you know, things like your Oculuses, you reanimate your Oculuses, things like you storm them out, things like your Neo Brands, all that sort of stuff, really well placed at the moment. Particularly because the reactive decks are being checked by Boros Energy, getting checked by Eldrazi, getting checked by Prowess, etc. Yeah, I think in Modern, that's where you want to be. You want to be proactive. You want to have a proactive game strategy. This is my strong A strategy. Okay, what else? What is my B strategy? This is it. Okay, can that win games in Modern? Yes, it can. Okay, cool. We've got a deck now.
I like I like that sort of aspect of it, because, you know, your deck, Goryel's Vengeance, that's got a solid plan A of turn 1 Surveil, get an Atraxa into the bin, turn 2 reanimate it, and then it's also just got Psychic Frog as a plan B, which is it just grinds out games.
Plays Ketramos.
And Ketramos apparently has Ketramos as well. Okay. Same like Living End, like we mentioned, reanimate a big massive board state, or you could just swing in with a lot of 3/4s. What's your plan B?
Late game, flash in a Solitude. You know, there's a 3/2 lifelink, kill one of your things, answer it, can't be fatal pushed.
My plan B is an early launch and a breath of fresh air before round.
That is a great plan B, to be fair.
Yeah. So I think that's the only real solid rule in Modern. I think that's what you should be aiming for. If you're a control mage who's got a real strong grasp of the exact meta you're going to go into, fair one, because you can build to that. Yeah. But Modern being so wide open at the moment, it's like, I mean, I was playing in the Mega Modern Axion, I went 4-3-1, and I must admit, 2 of my losses were the fact that I didn't see a Goryel's Vengeance in the top 25 cards of my deck, and that was really annoying because I would have just won on the spot. But that's by the by.
Just before we move on, when we mentioned before about Storm as well, like, it's just got a combo plan, and that seems to be it. Josh, we actually found out that that's quite the opposite in the Team Trios event, right?
What's that, sorry?
So like Storm not having a plan B, we found out that it could just be the exact opposite, and they play like Questing Druids and start attacking with Rals and stuff. Yeah,
it's not a good plan B.
No, it's not a good plan B, but it is a plan B nevertheless.
I wish they would have made Ral a free one so that lads can attack. But there we go. That's another world. That's Mon Horizons 4 Ral.
Yeah.
By the way, I do think that if those picking a deck, if you want to pick the one of the big 3, Boros Energy, Eldrazi, Prowess, I still think that's a really reasonable decks to pick, because they present really strong questions. And Boros Energy does get the free wins. It does have the I win button. The Prowess decks have the I win button. The Eldrazi decks has the I win button of here's my Emrakul, top deck Emrakul. You know, it does have those sort of really strong practice strategies. And I do think that, you know, we're talking about a lot about combo, but I do think those decks have the tools and have the sort of the strength to just push through all that stuff. It's
Speaking of Eldrazi, if you've not done so already, go and check out last week's episode where me and Sam sat down with Duffy and we chatted about Red Green Eldrazi and all the other different Eldrazi decks like Brood-Scale, you had Aggro, Ramp, Tron, so on and so forth. So if you've not done so already, after this one, go watch that.
I also want to mention one deck actually that we've not mentioned yet, and I do think it's a really strong contender to be a top pick for a competitive event, and that's Domain Zoo. Domain Zoo prevents really hard to deal with threats, but also has the backup strategy of stubborn denials, counter spells, leyline binding, all that good stuff, and it's a really powerful deck. Particularly if you're not attacking the land base, it has an I-win button of turn 2 Scion and Leyline of the Guild Pact. It has the strong interaction. It has burn. It's a really aggressive deck. It has flages. You can build it in different ways to, if you want to be like a scam sort of deck, to play Doorkeeper Thrall, to scam in your Flage. I've seen it with Null Drifters in the past, where you can scam in a Null Drifter. Really hard to deal with threats sometimes with the Annihilator trigger. It's a really strong contender, and I do think that people should look at that sort of deck as well. And it's got really good matchup into Boros Energy as well, particularly with the life gains, etc. But yeah,
prowess as well. It's got a really good matchup into prowess.
Yeah, really good. Kill a lot of the threats, no problem. Prowess isn't really playing any sort of green protection spells that traditional prowess once was playing. I think that's a really strong deck. In fact, 2 of my losses yesterday in my 2 leagues were down to Zoo, because I just couldn't. They were just faster than me with the interaction, and they have built-in graveyard hate with the Kavus as well, which I forgot about briefly. So yeah, that's a really strong. It's actually a perfect example of a deck with a strong A plan, A aggro plan, but the B plan is I'm just going to control and burn you out, because it has umpteen burn spells in its depth, and also it has the ability to play things like Fable and Millbreaker to smooth out its draws. It has, because it's 5 colors, you can splash into black for something. It's a strong deck. I think a real good contender. It's probably something I'm going to be. So the 3 decks I'm looking at the moment are Zoo, Dimir Oculus, and Glorious Vengeance. They're the 3 decks I've sort of like focused my my testing towards at the moment, personally.
Mana base is a headache though, right? Especially playing 5 colors, trying to get them all on 2.
The skill of that deck is to fetch properly. That's the skill. Well, the skill deck is obviously like. Well, yeah.
Leyline in your open hand, easy peasy.
But that's your like, if you can get 2 games out of 15 with the Leyline Scion strategy of just, well, here's my threat, try and beat it, Scion into something, or he plays Ragavan, low to the ground stuff, get really good against Eldrazi. It's a real contender. It's something I'd be considering.
Definitely.
Strongly. I know Jack had not a good time with it, but I do think that potentially you could just try a different build. We had this conversation about Fable in that deck, and he wasn't a fan, but I think Fable answers the problems that the deck has, i.e. the really bad draws, because it has no draw engine. You can just draw land, or just draw like inconsequential threat or numerous Ragavans or whatever, and you can't really do anything. But it has that's the sort of give and take to strong strategy decks with no
engine.
Not necessarily engine, but with like agency in terms of preordains, ponders, considers, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Card selection.
Yeah.
Anything to add on picking a deck, lads?
Nope, all good.
No.
Sweet. Sam, you've got 2 hot takes for us, was it?
I've got a couple. I've got a couple.
So just for viewer discretion, we don't know me and Dan haven't heard these. We don't know what these are. So this is live reaction to I don't even know what the hot takes are going to be. Like I'm so in the dark. Like Sam was probably sat on the toilet last night, sent us a voice note. I've got a cross idea because let's face it, lads, but the greatest ideas in mankind have come from someone sat on the toilet. This just is what it is. So I'm hoping this is a good idea. We'll find out. We're going to post it
If not,
regardless.
it's cool.
No, we're sending it.
Oh,
we're doing it live. We'll do it
I need
live.
more time. Okay, so context-wise, we have sat down with very strong players. We've been lucky enough, and obviously are still very grateful for that. Myra, Stanley. We discussed Jeskai Ascendancy. We discussed everything Mono Red and Cutter. We had Duffy on, who is, he knows
Eldrazi specialist.
Cards, like more than I know.
Don't tell him that though, because it gets to his head.
Yeah, to be fair, this is past his bedtime, so he'll miss it. But one of my favorite things is discussion and sure. It's great to have opinions, and it's great to be like, I am right. But sometimes the discussion is more fun than the opinion because it's the flow of that conversation. So I've got some hot takes in relation to deck building and deck choice, more importantly.
Okay.
And I don't agree with these. I've just sort of, I won't tell you which ones I agree with. But I just want to see how you guys react to it, and hopefully our listeners at home react to it, because hopefully you'll get the gears turning and some thoughts flowing. So my first hot take, guys, and this one might be a bit too controversial, but my first one is that playstyle is a myth and doesn't exist and should never be in contention when you're picking your deck.
I disagree.
Yeah, that's rough.
Okay, let me give you some more context before everyone starts crying.
Okay.
Delete your comments, guys. So let's say there is no reason not to play Boros Energy.
Okay.
My play style, in inverted commas, is combo. But if I shuffle up Boros Energy and play Boros Energy, I'm going to go Guide of Souls, Ossel Pride, Ajani, Goblin. But I'm going to cast my good cards at the best moment. That's not play style. What people mean is affinity for strategy, not play style. Play style is a myth. It doesn't exist, right?
I see what you mean.
I see what you mean now, yeah.
So I've got a comment on this. So you can take aspects of what you're good at and what you understand that in Magic, and you can apply it to other strategies. So, for example, what you're saying is that I'm playing the good cards in the correct sequencing, which sequencing is a combo player's mindset. So you're taking your understanding of a game or understanding of a strategy or understanding of what you play in Magic, and you're applying it to another deck, i.e. I'm applying my combo brain or my combo mindset to an aggro strategy by sequencing my cards correctly, because I'm just playing good cards and I'm doing it in the right order. But you get someone who's like, hasn't got an affinity with it, I'm going to play, I don't know, I'm going to play Ocelot Pride before I play my Guide of Souls, for example, which if you're a combo minded and you're thinking 2 turns ahead, well, that's wrong, because why would I get my value? I'm listing value there. So I see where that is from. I see where that is. And I think I've changed my mind from my initial reaction. I think you can take your understanding of the game and change it to a different strategy. Because every one of us started with it. Well, maybe not Dan, because Mono Red go Brewer. But every one of us probably picked up started with probably a non-blue deck of some description when we first picked up Magic. Probably had green in it, and we've then evolved from that. The more we understand the game and the more we take our understanding of the decks we've played and applied them to different archetypes. That's my response.
That's a good response. Dan?
I like it. So if I was to play blue-white control, for example, right, and there was a clear board state and I've got a Snapcaster Mage in my hand, I am casting that Snapcaster Mage at the end of my opponent's turn for no value whatsoever, apart from the fact that it's an attacker that gets him for 2, right? So I very much agree with your point, or your take rather, now that you've reworded it. So Josh has hit the nail on the head. So I wouldn't sit down with Javier Dominguez and play the exact same blue-white control list and play it as well as he is. One is a much better Magic player than me, 2 times world champion, so on and so forth. And me just slightly, yeah. And then you've got me, just a lad from the UK who's been to attended one RC properly. So I wouldn't play a deck that you two will play the exact same. I would think, I'm going to play this because it's a bit more aggressive. Because I'm used to deploying my questions and saying, can you kill this? If they can kill it, it's like, okay, here's another question. Can you kill this? So I'm used to sort of losing myself a bit of card advantage and just sort of forcing plays from my opponent rather than the correct play of, oh well, if I just hold this for one more turn, then it's a guaranteed win. So I'm more used to sort of like trying to grind out the early turns, and when it gets past like turn maybe 5, turn 6, then that's when I start struggling a bit. But that's just a mono red player brain, right?
So
Surely.
I think that this you when you look at deck lists, you sort of, oh, this has blue in it, I'm not looking at this deck list because it's not. I'm not attracted to this. Where you need to take the mindset that Sean Goddard had, where you need to stop playing your pet decks and what you're used to and look to try and win. That might be to completely change archetypes. Now, I know for a fact I can't pick up blue white control and play that deck efficiently. Like, that is not my style. Like, I know for a fact I cannot understand that. Like, I cannot I cannot do what Christian does and just answer, and then win with, like, making 1/1 soldiers with my land or something like that. Like, I can't do that. Like, that's not me. I know for a fact that's not me. But I can definitely apply my tempo strategy to an aggro deck, or a tempo strategy to, I don't know, like Infect, for example, is a deck that I really enjoy. In Legacy, you know, it's that sort of applying that tempo strategy to a really aggressive combo finish.
Yeah.
I get that. And just to add a little sprinkle onto this hot take, which I hope to your guys' credit, that was a pretty hot take. So that sounds to me, and this is just devil's advocate, but that sounds to me like you're saying you wouldn't be able to play the deck you've never played before well. Surely that's just a matter of time and effort, right?
So I have tried blue-white control piles, and it didn't go well at all, because I just I guess I haven't fundamentally understood it, and I would benefit more from coaching, you know. But yeah, this is from my response there is from experience. Yeah.
Okay.
As you can probably guess, I've never picked up a blue-white control shell either. Ever. To be honest, I don't even think I plan on doing it, because just from the games that I've played against blue-white control, they've just been miserable and they've gone on far longer than what they should have.
I understand how to play against them.
Yeah.
But I'm usually playing a deck that is good against them, so that's probably why.
Yeah.
Isn't Living End blue-white with a lot of control cards in it?
Actually, it's green, blue,
white.
With a sprinkle
of white.
Sprinkle
with a little sprinkle of white.
We'll argue about this later.
The white could be black in Living End.
Nah, don't like it.
It could be though.
Don't like it at all.
Second hot take, go.
George typing.
This is going to be a very long podcast, but it's okay. But go on, second hot take.
I've got two more. I'll make them quick. So, second hot take: prowess, modern prowess, as we see it today, is a really bad deck.
Agree. Agree.
So
it's overplayed.
I agree it's overplayed. I don't think it's a bad deck. I think that the current lists are awful, right? I'm not the biggest fan of Violent Urge. When I was first looking at the deck, that was the first card that I cut, because I feel like in a format that maybe not so much now, but like notoriously has Lightning Bolt, it had Path to Exile once many moons ago, and it's got Fatal Push. So it's got 3 Premier, 1-drop removal spells, or even now, you know, you've got like Subtleties, you've got Force Indications, you've got 0 mana interaction for all these spells that you're trying to cast and stuff. So I think that once Prowess finds its feet and it decides to finally cut the right cards in Violent Urge and maybe Mutagenic Growth, no, Mutagenic Growth's great. Maybe Slickshot Show Off. Actually, I'm not a fan of Slickshot Show Off in Prowess. It is good. It can just kill someone on turn 3. But it's 2 toughness and dies to everything. So I think once it starts to find its feet a bit more and it plays, you know, better cards like Flage, for example, you play more white, then yeah. But I don't think the deck is bad, but it is overplayed.
It's overplayed. It's easy. People are skewing it when they add white to Prowess. I'm thinking that is a bad mistake. What I do like, what I have seen recently, what I do like is some splashing black for Thoughtseize in the sideboard, and also switching to Oculus, to changing to playing Oculus. I mean, if you're not aware of they're going to slam an Oculus and you're holding up Fatal Pushes, or you're holding up burn kill spells, for example, that can be a problem. But it sort of goes against its own strategy because it uses the graveyard to enable its sort of explosiveness.
Yeah,
but I do think I think
that's why I've not liked it.
It's easy to play against once you understand what they're bringing in and how they're going to play, and it's also dies to good sideboard choices and main deck building. Solitude is a house against it. Ephemerate Solitude is a house against them. They don't play protection spells. You can have games where you've just got like combat tricks in your hand and no threat out, right? I think it's overplayed. In Mega Modern, I don't even think it top 8'd, did it?
No, it didn't do good.
It's done all right online because of lots of people playing it. You throw a deck at tournaments enough, one of them is going to get through and top 8. It's going to have good matchup lining. But the challenges at the moment are so wide open and so so many different decks are winning different challenges every time. But yeah, I think I wouldn't bring prowess to a tournament. People are just playing like Zoo and that are playing so many answers to it. There's what's that High Noon? People playing High Noon. Like, how do you answer that card? It's I wouldn't pick that deck for a tournament. I think when Lucas picked it for Axion, he did himself a disjustice when he has access, when all he does is grind Armling at the Titan. Yeah, I agree. I think the deck was hot, and now it's not.
I think
you'll still see it though. You'll still see it being played. People love that strategy.
I think the issue you have with prowess is twofold. The best prowess threats aren't better than Boros Energy's threats. Monosuit Swift Spear versus Guide of Souls, Moss of Pride, whatever. And secondly, the door is quickly closing on the innovation for that build or that strategy. And it's not like there's something that's not been discovered yet. All of the cards are face up. And if people are playing what's the best 75 at the moment with potentially a couple of switcheroo slots in there, then I can see the deck quickly being left behind because there's not much room for innovation there. I agree with Josh. I'm not a big fan of the deck. But from Josh's point of view, you mentioned Grixis, and then my head went to Josh putting Psychic Frog into prowess. And if I ever get damaged...
Psychic Frog is not a prowess card.
No, but it can be equipped to Chorus Seal Cutter. Yeah, there we go.
Come on, what's your third hot take, Simon?
Final hot take before we need to calm Josh down. So
I need to get a cold shower after this conversation.
When looking at events, 9th to 16th place is more important than top 8. So what I mean by that is when you're combing through modern challenges, this made top 8, this made top 8, this made top 8. I don't think that's as important as what came from 9th to 16th.
Oh, yeah, right.
I think 9th to 16th can be more representative of the entire tournament than the top 8.
Exactly.
And shout out to the Cast and Commons podcast, because when they do their podcast, they always honorably mention 9th and 10th place, which I think is really important because they're obviously didn't top 8 because they're breakers or whatever. I mean, I'm not going to mention my 9th place ID into the Legacy Cup in Vegas again. I promise I won't do that. But like this you look at like 9th to 16th and you see like they have the same, if not better records than the top 8 because of how breakers were, or you might get a 6-1 that's just 9th or 10th. And I do think a lot of times I've looked at the tournament and been like, oh, this is a really diverse top 8. But then you look at like 9th to 16th, wait, there's 4 versions of this deck there, and then you look at the rest of the meta, you're like, this deck is heavily played. We should tech against this deck because it's heavily played and it's doing well. I don't know if it's more important because what the top 8 does is it's showing you tech on how they've beat those 9th to 16th. But I guess unless you've got any more context behind that hot take, I think it is important.
No, I've purposely used the word more.
Because I think 9th to 16th is probably more representative of the entire tournament because they've had to beat those decks to get to top 8.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I don't think that's hot. I think that is actually quite cold, Sam. Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll go away and last place is actually the most representative of the fourth.
Have you got a fourth hot take, or was that just three?
No, that I'll leave it as my free for now.
If you got another one, we'll do another one. So I'm quite enjoying this. I mean,
fine.
It's our podcast. It's our podcast. If we want it to last an hour and a half, we can make it last an hour and a half. Like, it's our podcast.
So the last one I've written down, and I think that this one might be a bit too controversial.
Oh.
I think it's an absolutely rubbish excuse to go, that deck is too complicated, I don't understand, I'm not going to play it. It is a matter of time and patience and practice. There is no such thing as a deck being too hard to play.
I'm guilty. I'm guilty of this, so I'm going to disagree.
Okay, so this argument is a lot played for Amulet Titan. And the reason why Amulet Titan is not been banned because it's hard to play and people don't see the lines and they have to put a lot of time into it. I get that. But at the same time, you have to realise, back to my point, what tournament I'm going to. If I'm in a 15-round tournament and I have a deck that has 75,000 lines, do I really want to be bringing that deck to that tournament? Or do I want a deck where I know the A and B strategy, clear, concise, I know how to sideboard against their hate, or whatever, or sideboard against the matchups. I know that because there's a lot of decisions to make, right? If you're adding decisions to your game where you don't need to, so you're gonna get, if you get the same output for a deck that requires half the decision making, like Boros Energy, to a deck that requires all the decision making, i.e. Amulet Titan, but not only decision making, but sequencing, and then I'm adding that to an already long day, where I could be fatigued, or I could make a mess up, or I could just fetch the wrong land, for example. I'm playing Glorious Vengeance at the moment. It's playing 3 lands. The amount of times I've died because I didn't fetch my second white source because then I didn't think about the top deck Wrath of Skies. I just top decked, that was to win me the game, for example, or I didn't get my third black source to do something, or without making those unnecessarily making those decisions where you lose to yourself. I think is quite a strong way to approach a deck. Unless you are like Dom Harvey, you see the Matrix, your canister, you see the Matrix, with your deck. I think it's a fine strategy not to pick a deck too complicated, move on. I think it's fine. I think it's fine.
But just make I like this idea. There's a lot of plays, but there's only ever one play, and that's the best play. So just do that one. Right?
Got a point.
But what if you do the wrong play and it ends up to be the right play?
Very true, but I could do the wrong play with Amulet Titan or with Mono Red Burn or Oops or Spells or whatever. So, I just think that if you think Amulet Titan's the best deck to play, put it through the ringer the same way you would put Murktide, sorry Josh Single, or Living End Dan or Belcher Sam or whatever else. I just think that. And the reason I like this one personally, because I wrote it and I'm great, but I think that Magic players are a bit, how do I put this? Not in a negative way, but I think Magic players can be excuse orientated. And I think that I'm excuse orientated all the time. I
100%.
And don't agree with me. No, I'm joking. No, we are. And I think that sometimes you're mulligan to 4 and there really is nothing you could do in that game. But other times, that excuse ends the discussion, which is what these have been for, right? So why put yourself in that box? And just try stepping out of that comfort zone, I think, as well.
I think stepping out of comfort zone is very good. It makes you a more rounded Magic player for sure. But I think you have to see what your goal is, what you try and achieve, and what decks are available. I don't see the point in handicapping yourself for no reason, unless you're like, I just want to see.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's a good way of seeing it too. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Any more hot takes?
No. I promise I'm out of hot takes.
Okay, that's cool.
Okay,
Josh,
so
Dan called them cold. What did you think? Hot, cold?
I think they're pretty good, mate. I like them. I like that. This is good. I liked it. It's a good idea.
Thanks.
I didn't know what you were going to ask. It was actually really exciting.
Yeah.
It really played with my ADHD brain.
I saw the moment you switched on. Like, yes, Josh, let's go.
Yeah. Okay, so we've got two more things to cover before we finish the pod. The first one is, Dan, you've got some listener questions for us.
So we've got two. For the last couple of weeks now, we've had this link down in the description where you click on it, you type a question, and it comes straight to us.
Yeah. We should actually put that in a tweet. Dan, your job is to make a tweet with that. That's your job.
I'll do it. I'll do it. That's tonight. That's fine. Maybe tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
So, if you want to ask us a question for us to answer on the show, feel free to click on the link below, type in a question for us, and then we'll answer it for us. So the first one, our first ever one, which I'm assuming is from Chad Magic member Marco, because he's been playing this on Magic Modo recently.
Yeah.
What do you think of the red-green Eldrazi Heragast version of the deck? So for those who don't know, Heragast is some 9-mana card, but it's got
Emerge, right?
What's it called? Emerge, yeah. So it's like 6 red. When you cast a spell, you may exile your hand. If you do, draw 3 cards. And then each creature spell you cast has Emerge. The Emerge cost is equal to its mana cost. Josh, you sort of said that it was bad, right? Because you just tapped out and just
drew
3 cards and then did nothing.
I played against this deck yesterday, and they tapped out, and I just slapped them in the face. Well, they blocked my Atraxa, but it was fine. It was like whatever. In fact, no, actually, that's not what happened. I tell a lie. What I did was I ephemerated a Solitude. I killed their dragon and their Microspawn, whatever they had out, and then I just slapped them with a frog and a Atraxa. So it was like it was a 7 mana or whatever mana cost of it. He tapped out for it anyway. Setup card, so like you play a 6/6. It's like it didn't impact the board, is what I'm saying. It's not like a Devour Destiny, or it wasn't like an Emrakul. It didn't impact the board. It wasn't like a Microspawn. I think you're not impacting the board. I think if you want a card draw engine, I think Autumn Burchett was on for a winner with Null Drifter. I think Null Drifter is a better card than that, because you're not discarding your hand either. So you're just drawing 2 straight away, and even if I know you have to splash blue for that, but I think it's fairly easy to splash blue, right? But I think that Null Drift, if you want to be doing that sort of thing, card drawing, I think Null Drifter is probably the way to go. If that's the game plan you want to do with Eldrazi, I mean, I know that the red is for line. I know they can play Line Breaker, and I think there's some bolts in the sideboard, but if that's what you want to do, I would look at Null Drifter personally, because even if you've got a 3 mana do something as well, which fills your graveyard with a creature to then later cast an easier Emrakul, that's where I would be looking, I think, if I was playing such a cringe deck.
Okay, well, for one, Eldrazi may be cringe, but Heragast is an Eldrazi dragon, which is actually kind of sick.
Yeah, okay, fair one.
Okay, cool. So I think Heragast does a couple of interesting things, and I think that Josh has just made the perfect comparison as to Null Drifter. So Team Eldrazi is a little awkward at the moment, because the Eldrazi decks have gone to this rat race of Stone Rains and land destruction and whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
And so have other decks, to be fair to Eldrazi's play. And I like this idea of playing this red version of Null Drifter to make a Stone Rain less impactful. Arguably, right? If you have Utopia Sprawl in blue and that gets blown up, that can leave you with 4 dead Null Drifters for a bit. I like the idea that the 2 things the card do as well is they can... That buyback cost on Kozak's return is pretty relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And Heragast can let you accelerate that out the same way that Null Drifter lets you. What Heragast is able to do that I really like is Eldrazi struggles with drawing cards, obviously draw some cards, but it's not bad in multiples because it can emerge itself.
Mm-hmm.
So it costs 2 red. That's fine.
Yeah.
Eldrazi have also shifted towards, with Prowess and Boros and random other aggro decks being a thing, playing main deck Riven Chrysalis.
Mm-hmm.
Riven Chrysalis is great, but it can also be very, very dead in other matchups. I like the idea of turning my Chrysalis into card advantage, reducing Heragast cost by 4. That's okay. At least my Chrysalis is doing something then. And because it gives you other cards emerge too, it interacts really well with Emrakul, as far as I'm aware. So you can start casting Emrakul for 0 mana.
Yeah, because you can other creatures. Did you read the card out, Dan?
Yes, I don't think I've read the.
Do you want to read the card out?
I've read the card out. Yeah, sorry. Each creature spell you cast has emerge.
Yeah. Okay.
So if your Emrakul is reduced and then you emerge it, I think you can start casting 3 copies of Emrakul the Promised Land, which is pretty cool and pretty strong.
So, by the looks of it, it looks as though it's just one creature that you could sacrifice. So to get a free Emrakul, you would need to sacrifice another Emrakul or another creature with 13 CMC.
But Emrakul has that cost reducing effect on it already.
Yeah, it has the.
Yeah,
I would have to double check my judge knowledge, and by that I mean Google. It's all in my brain, I promise. But I think that it starts to do silly things with Emrakul. But like, I'm not completely sold on it.
Is that just win more though? Is that just win more?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Yeah, I feel like it is. Yeah,
because you cast that to then cast the Emrakul when you can probably just cast the Emrakul.
Cast the Emrakul, yeah.
You're getting a cast trigger.
I'm not sure.
It's
a cool card.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if it's a good card. I'll say that much.
Cool.
Okay, brilliant.
And second question.
Next question to wrap up. Nice and easy. What is your favourite and least favourite mechanic? I'll start if you boys don't mind.
Yeah.
My favourite is haste, and my and my least favourite is lifelink. Spoilers.
Oh God, what is my?
Yours is probably Flash, right, Josh?
Yeah, probably, but it's a bit boring in terms of like what I could pick.
Dan said haste.
Yeah,
you know what I'm going to say? You know what I'm actually going to say? Because I was such a Rhinos enjoyer. I really like the random and chaos of Cascade. But obviously, you build Cascade decks to do one thing. But if it was like a Jund Cascade, that's pretty cool. What I don't enjoy,
Emerge.
I don't actually know. Emerge is pretty cool because I played my first Pioneer deck was the blue red Emerge.
With Elder Deep Fiend.
Yeah, I love that deck. That was class.
It was good.
Go on, Sam. You answer while I have a think of my least favorite.
So my least favorite, I don't even think this is close, and 2 share joint bottom for me. And not only do I think they are bad, I think they are just obscenely whoever thought of these is like, I don't like you. I'm sorry. They both come from weird sets too, and that's contraptions, and that's
from the stickers. Stickers is my. If I could swear in this podcast, I'd be swearing right now. Stickers, as an eternal gamer, stickers can go in the toilet.
Yeah, what annoys me the most is that they are from sets that are inherently meant to be fun and relaxed. You can't. I do not understand how contraptions work, and I do. What are these stickers adjacent? Is it fairgrounds or is it attractions or something? Is it attractions?
There was attractions that did something,
and then
the stickers. That's with the whole sticker goblin thing, and they couldn't put it on MTGO. Get in the toilet.
So I really don't like those mechanics because essentially, if your set's meant to apply to casual audiences who want some fun, which I couldn't be bothered having any, but it doesn't work. No. Sorry, that's as aggressive as I've gotten. Favorite mechanic?
Horsemanship.
That's a good one. Horsemanship's pretty good, to be fair. I think the mechanic that I enjoyed the most, and this might sound incredibly contradicting considering I've just criticized stickers and contraptions for, I absolutely adored Mutate. I thought Mutate was sick.
Yeah, Mutate was fun.
Mutate was really weird. Cool. It made the limited format really, really good, unless somebody opened a companion. Companion's pretty bad as well, actually. But I adored the design of Ikori's limited format. Companions removed. Mutate's really, really cool. But sadly, it is a little clunky in paper. I used to play Mutating Commander 2, but I'd say those.
I mean, every mechanic is, Uza said, every mechanic is basically kicker and horsemanship anyway.
Yeah, very true.
Out of curiosity, I mean, and we're just going to send this podcast, but I think it was GP Vegas last year, I think it was, where Mark Rosewater had a list of the 20 worst mechanics, and I just found the list here. So I'll just read them out dead quick. So from 1 to 20 in this order, it's Bands, Gotcha, Sweep, Recover, Radiance, Day/Night. Day/Night is a bad one, actually.
No, Day/Night's a bad one.
Fateful Hour, Epic, Unmemorable, Cleave. Cleave was just weird. Initiative, that was annoying.
Initiative's pretty bad. Yeah.
Forecast, Miracle, Partner, Devoid, Annihilator. I like Annihilator. Haunt, Companion, Megamorph, and Stickers.
I like Megamorph.
I don't know what half of them are.
Megamorph wasn't Megamorph the one where it came in with a 1/1 counter?
It's flip with a 1/1 counter.
Yeah.
I guess it kind of sucks from a design play. But yeah, Initiative sucks. The Monarchy, I'm not a big fan of either.
Oh, I like Monarchy and Pauper. Monarchy was fine. Like, it's fine now. Like, in the power scheme of things, I like it in Pauper. I dealt with it a little bit in Legacy, but Bowmasters is in the Legacy. So, right, that is sort of towards the end of the pod now, lads. Have you got anything to add before I sort of wrap it up with the giveaway or the potential giveaway?
No.
Oh, good.
No.
Okay, so when we're close to hitting 500 subscribers, when we do, we're going to put out a competition to give away a set of Sultai Apex Ultra Pro sleeves, because we are sponsored by Ultra Pro, which we forgot to mention at the beginning of the pod. We mention it now. So Chad Magic and the Chad Magic team and de facto battlechads is sponsored by Ultra Pro, so we're going to give away a set of Ultra Pro Apex. These sleeves are brilliant. They're excellent sleeves. They feel really nice. They got a nice snap to them, and the matching deck box, so the Sultai deck box. So we'll be giving away this as one package to a listener, but after we reach 500 subs, and we'll push out how you can enter that sort of giveaway. But yeah.
Well, at the time of recording this podcast, we are on 589. So
500.
489.
Oh, sorry, 489. So there's going to be at least 11 of you that have got a friend that isn't subscribed to this podcast.
Yeah.
Send us to your friend, and then you can join the giveaway, and you might get some free swagger.
We might even do it in the form of like a listener question. So ask a question, and then like whoever's the best. Unless you want to randomize, we'll decide. We'll think about it. But that's going to get given away anyway. It's really cool. I'm looking forward to give this away. My only commander deck is a Sultai commander deck, so I'm like looking at this like thinking, I could just keep it for myself, but no, I'm going to give it away. We're going to give it away. Any last points, lads, before we wrap up?
Nope, all good, thank you.
Dan, do you want to do the obvious to finish us?
Yep, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, follow us on Twitter, and share the podcast with a friend. And yeah, thanks for watching.
Cheers, everybody.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.